and welcome to the Total Soccer Show. I'm Taylor Rockwell. No Daryl Grove with me today. He is on his way back from northern Michigan, so instead I called up our old friend Alexi Lalas and our new friend Rob Stone. They were carpooling together and were kind enough to give me a good 40 minutes of their time to discuss all things U.S. soccer. That includes what's been going on with the Gold Cup, that includes biting and pinching, that includes Bruce Arena and what he's doing with this team, what their expectations are going forward, and maybe what their expectations are after that 2018 World Cup. It's a very good time. I very much enjoyed being part of their conversation. It's interesting to kind of be a fly on the wall in that aspect and hear basically what you imagine they talk about every single day when they ride to work together. So, definitely a fun time, definitely a very good interview, if I do say so myself. Daryl will be back tomorrow. We'll be previewing the USA's Gold Cup semifinal match against Costa Rica. Should be a good one. We'll get some predictions. We'll get some things to look out for then. But until we record that show, here is my conversation with Rob Stone and Alexi Lalas. Joining me now via car phone, I'm guessing, although I don't know if that still exists. So I've got Alexi Lalas and Rob Stone of Fox Soccer of FS1. Gentlemen, thank you guys for joining me.
Watch out, that car shot! All right, he avoided it. Did you just try to make it seem like we have one of those old car phone things where you pull it out of a shoulder strap or something like that?
Do you not? I thought you guys were like Zach Morris style with the world's largest cell phone.
I saw that on, I think it was This Is the 90s.
Oh, right.
And
Exactly.
where they have the unveiling of the car phone. I remember when my best buddy growing up, Rob Thompson, in Shrewsbury, Connecticut, we played so much soccer, and we would drive we'd find a field to play soccer, and we used to pull up the cars, and they would have their car phones, and my buddy and I would take off our shoe, just stare at the guy, and just hold the shoe up to our phone and to our ears, and just have a faux conversation while we stared at the guy.
You mocked him for how could it, you're never going to have a real phone in a car or anything. How dare you?
Talking into my Patrick soccer.
And now Rob Stone has learned his lesson. In 2017, he finds himself in the car next to me talking to you guys as we head off to the Fox studios for yet another day of Gold Cup 2017 action.
All right, so then not a car phone then. I'm some sort of a hands-free speakerless system. I'm assuming.
Exactly. We make sure that we are safe when we are doing everything, including talking about soccer in Los Angeles traffic.
Gotcha. Actually, this is all I wanted to talk about. The entire interview is just going to be about the different technology you all use to talk about soccer.
Beautiful. I can hear the subscribers and for first-time listeners leaving as we speak.
You will not be monitoring me.
Well, I did want to ask you all, how did the carpooling start? Because I know you all do it fairly often, so I wanted to hear a little bit about who maybe first extended the invitation.
That's a good one. You know, we both live in the same town. We both go to work at the same place, and usually on the same days and the same time. We're friends from a long time back, and I don't know, it just kind of made sense. We're both good human beings who understand the role our environment plays in the world, and plus we thought we could probably save a few minutes carpooling, which has not been the case at all. It's done nothing to shorten our drive time, but it has given us a medium to converse between the two of us, converse maybe with our researcher, do radio shows, do podcasts. I mean, we really bang out a lot of content when we're driving home and to work, whether it's personally for us in our education of the game and our shows that are upcoming, or just kind of spreading the proverbial soccer gospel to folks like you.
Yeah, two things. Number one, Rob said we were friends and good human beings. I would maybe take issue, but we can talk about that later. Number two, and I think you did hit upon the thing. We do have ulterior motive. Yes, I guess we are friends. But
you guess we are friends. All right.
To be together and to talk about either what's happened or what's going to happen, especially Rob being the host, he kind of has to have these touchstone type of moments and nuggets in his brain at times. And it's amazing how many times stuff that we will have discussed either privately or, as he said, on radio shows or with our researchers while we're in the car comes up. And so basically it's almost as if we're forming what's going to then happen on TV. And for me, it's incredibly beneficial because I get to kind of sort out some thoughts in the same way that, I do Periscope or Facebook Live. I look at it as a training session. For me, this is just kind of training and research and getting a background. So there is a wonderful friendship. I joke about that, but there's also this other benefit from a work standpoint. And I think it does benefit us individually and ultimately when we get on air and do the show.
I was watching a Seinfeld episode the other day. It wasn't one of the better ones. It was when Jerry and Costanza came out to L.A. to try and find Kramer, who was trying to make it in the business. And they had this whole shtick about they were in a hotel room together, and Jerry had written down these perfect jokes, perfectly worded jokes on a piece of paper, but he had kind of crumpled it up, and Lupe, the maid, had thrown it away, and it threw off Jerry. Like, he was so he bombed on the Tonight Show because he didn't have these perfectly worded jokes. And for us, I think we've stumbled onto a lot of, not perfectly worded, but we've stumbled onto these hot button issues that we didn't think we cared about or the audience cared about. And I mean, honestly, I would say a good portion of our material, not that we stumble on it, but we go, oh, wait a second, we thought we cared about this element of it, but in essence, we're really more bothered about this, or we think this is something extraordinary to hit, and the way we hit it in these random conversations takes us off. My guess is that doing this podcast with you today, we will reference one or two elements of this conversation. You and I were driving into work, I think it was last weekend. It was before the last group stage game. We just start talking about random things, and because the two of us have a really good soccer Rolodex, we make a lot of random phone calls to people. And we called Mike Burns. Burnsy's, he's the GM or president of the Revs now? I forget what he is. Something.
Technical side.
And we called him, and we were just kind of BSing. He's busting us, and we're cracking, but we ended up talking about Kellen Rowe, and I remember pulling out a nugget he said. He's a tweener, and it worked perfectly for what his role was that game. So we use all this stuff to, ideally at least, strengthen our work in front of the camera.
Well, Rob, I wanted to ask you actually specifically about that then, because since you're doing the hosting duties, I'm assuming your job is not to go off on monologues. But then if you're having all these conversations, I'm sure you're picking up some things that you would like to share that probably are pretty strong opinions. So do you save that for like this type of format where you do podcasts and interviews, or do you sometimes find yourself either bringing that stuff up while doing the pregame, postgame, halftime stuff, or do you tend to maybe try to give that to somebody else or let Alexi take that one?
I feel like Alexi can actually answer this question better than me. I'm not even looking at you, but I can hear you smiling because I know where you're going to go with this one. My job is to, at least in the way I look at it, I do store a lot of nuggets. I'm like a squirrel getting ready for winter, and I hear Alexi or Fernando or Ali or Eric or Warren or whatever, whether we're in the car or in a meeting room or changing or getting our makeup or hair done, I'll hear a little comment. And I'll hear a little comment during the course of the game, and I'll jot it down or I'll store it in my head, and I know that they know about it, that it's something that resonates with them. So their recall will be pretty fast and sharp. If I have to all of a sudden fill a minute and a half, 2 minutes, I know that Alexi said something about, I don't know, Chelsea center back situation, and he may not be ready to spew it out at that second, but the fact that he had already talked about it at one point in the day means that there is a conversation in there in his head, and he can get to it.
And there's usually a flag or a word or multiple words that trigger everything. So it's those triggers that you have. So he'll mention something within the question that'll trigger that conversation that we have, and then that take that I had is able to come out immediately.
But as far as your point on my takes, I do have few takes. I do keep them reserved, and the times I do let go, I probably actually end up getting in trouble here and there. I don't think it's my role. It's my role to get the best out of Alexi and the rest of the guys. But I do have a few stored up because I've been around the game a long time. I've seen a lot of stuff. I've seen a lot of people, and I don't think I may have had like some mini bursts on television.
I wish he'd do it more, and we have this argument all the time about what his role is, and I recognize and respect that he has to kind of be that traffic cop and that referee, but I also, because I know him so well, know that he has some really interesting takes on soccer, and he knows a whole lot more about soccer than a lot of people that have played the game do, to be quite honest. But I recognize his role. But when they come out, they're awesome. I don't know. A couple weeks ago or a couple months ago, he had a rant on the New England Revolution, which was epic and beautiful and wonderful, and actually said a lot of things that people were either wanted to hear or were too scared to say. And so when they come out, they're few and far between, but it's a certain quality over quantity type of proposition when it comes to Rob Stone's rant.
it's fun because Alexi knows what they are for the most part. There's like probably 3 go-tos in MLS that he could go to at any moment just to poke the bear, and then some other things in the international game. But when he wants to play that game with me, he can do it. But one of the things I love working with Lex is he has this wonderful sense of debate in his brain and how to not spin things, but how to carry on the conversation and kind of get at people, not agitate them, but just pull it out of people. And I was never a debater. Like, debates club in school never did anything for me. I'm very much like the last person to talk to me. I'm like, excellent point. I'm with you. But then somebody else can come up. I'm like, wow, maybe I like that point better. Alexi's really good at bringing that out of people, and even he brings it out of me sometimes. And I love it when he challenges a Fernando or an Eric or a Warren through the course of our content. And I see the little glint in his eyes every once in a while during rehearsals or in the car ride or when we're on live, where I say, here he goes. He's ready to line somebody up and go get him. And you're not afraid of a good argument.
Well, I can back that up, actually, because I think usually when we do these interviews, the person on the other end is kind of ready just to be asked the question, to give their answer, and then we roll on. Alexi is one of the few people who has flipped that around on me, and there have been a couple times when I've been like, I don't have an answer for this. I better talk for a second and try to figure something out. So, yeah, I'm familiar with him coming right back at you.
It's actually a trick sometimes, because when I don't have an answer, I'll like kind of position myself as having all the answers. The reality is that I don't, so sometimes I'll flip it back around because I have no idea, and it gives me time to think of one.
You learn that being a husband and a dad.
Exactly.
I don't have all the answers.
Why can't I do that? Oh, well, I'll just follow that up with a question. Well, I think of a reason why you can't do that.
All right, that's good to know. So now when it happens, when I'm like, Alexi, what do you think? And your response is, well, what do you think? I'm going to be like, well, what do you think? Like, it's just going to keep going around in circles, and we'll see where we end up. Perfect. All right, well, then let's talk a little bit about this U.S. team, since I'm assuming you all have been doing a couple different carpools, or carpooled a few times during this tournament. What has been the kind of overall narrative, either on the way to work or the way from work, about this team? Is it frustration? Is it annoyance? Is it confusion? Or are you kind of okay with it?
I don't think there's one word that fully describes what the U.S. is going through with this Gold Cup. I think it's a collection of them. But the overarching theme is, and Alexi said this a couple times, is that, all of this you have to put in context of World Cup qualifying this fall and ultimately Russia next summer. So, yes, you want to win this tournament. Every coach would love to win beautifully if they had the choice. But in the end, Bruce Arena is trying to find the right combinations inside the locker room and on the field. And it's going to take a lot of mixing and matching. And he needs to learn who he can trust and who he can't. And he can't just do that in a practice session or even in just one game. You need to give guys multiple opportunities to show their true colors. And whether it's kind of biting that bullet with how the back line has been so far this tournament, I think you have to endure that. Bruce has to go through that to say, okay, you're MLS good, you're not national team good. I can count on you. You, I got to worry about. You, let's think about you after Russia. You, let's come into qualifiers. So overall, it hasn't been glorious. It hasn't made me say, good Lord, we are a quarterfinalist next summer in Russia. But also, this isn't the team, and this isn't the temperature that they're in. This isn't the mode that they're going to be in next summer, ideally, but it's the closest thing they're really going to get outside of those qualifying games separated by 4 days. Rarely do you get this time alone with a group of men where you're playing multiple games and traveling distance in a short period of time. That's where you really find out who these guys are all about. And I think Bruce, in the end, yes, he wants to win it, but he needs to find out what is going to help him and his team grow and be better next summer. In the end, I got issues with the back line right now. I don't think there's been any great emergence. If anything, I think maybe like a Kellen Acosta has taken a step back. I think there's that resilience, reliance still on the veterans, on the hardcore guys to get us through. I would love to see some up-and-comers break through, but I don't think that's in the cards. We got it already in Pulisic, and I think, you and I can reasonably create our 23-man roster right now, Lex, and not be far off at all. Yep.
Yeah, I actually, well then let's take it down that road for a second then, because I kind of tend to believe that Arena already knows a pretty decent chunk of that 23-man roster, at least has a very concrete idea of who is going to be on that team and who won't be on that team. What do you all think in that regard? Like, probably know Bruce Arena better than I do. You certainly know Bruce Arena better than I do. Do you think he is sort of constantly evolving, or do you think he does have like 15 or 16 guys, as long as they're fit, they're in there, and then maybe we've got 7 more spots to fill, or do you think it's kind of an always evolving process?
Oh, I think he has a good idea, and not just because he's Bruce Arena, but because he's a human being, and I can confirm that he is a human being. I've met him several times. He seems very human to me, because ultimately, whether it's Bruce Arena or any coach, it's about a human opinion, and it's not a meritocracy. It's often, while they may say on the surface in public, well, you got to be informed. I've said before, form is fallacy, and it doesn't always equate. And it doesn't mean that just because you're playing incredibly for your club team that you are an automatic pick. It's personal preference. And Bruce Arena is going to have his favorites just like any other coach out there, and that's okay. So I do think in the back of his mind he has an ideal of how it looks, both the personnel and how they play, and it is looking forward. This BS narrative that's kind of come out, and I think it is reflective of Bruce Arena because of the type of person and coach and personality he is, that we are somehow being biased or unfair in the way that we are critiquing or criticizing him versus Jurgen Klinsmann. I think it fails to recognize how he was hired for a very different job, I think, and with very different expectations, both from the federation, from the fans, and from himself in the way that he went about publicly making very, very clear what he thought his job was, and that was to get the qualification process back on course, and to get the team to the World Cup and do well, which is ultimately where he will be judged. If he doesn't get the team to the World Cup, it's going to be a failure. And if he doesn't do well at the World Cup, it's going to be a failure. But if he fails at the Gold Cup, that's not going to be a failure, because that's not what he was hired to do. He was not hired to develop players. He was not hired for the aesthetic of on the field, or necessarily even to promote soccer out there. He was hired, as we said, to figure out qualification and get the team to the World Cup and do well.
That makes sense to me. But he was probably also hired to have, a couple reserve options, specifically at center back. And I'm wondering how he's feeling about that right now, how you all are feeling right now, because it does feel like with each game, it sort of is like, all right, well, this center back pairing didn't really work that well. We'll try a different one next time. Okay, we'll try a different one next time. And it seems like it's kind of keeps evolving. He's gone back to Omar Gonzalez and Matt Hedges last night. Obviously, that didn't work too well, in my opinion. So what have you all made of the U.S. defense? Do you have any ideas about what maybe is causing some of the problems that we've seen?
I don't know. It hurts my head to think, because every game you're like, oh, here's an opportunity for this guy. What a great chance. Oh, here comes Mora. Let's see what he's got. Lehigh, go get him, kid. Nottingham Forest Player of the Year. 3rd minute, what are you doing?
Yep.
The center back position, like, hey, as long as you guys flight the ball in, they're great. But outside of that, we've got some big issues. It has been nerve-wracking. I think it has been the one element that has really disturbed Bruce the most, because that goes against who he is. I guarantee you, Bruce is saying, at a minimum, we're going to be a bitch to play against. And our defense is going to make things miserable for you. You're not going to get beat. Balls are going to fly overhead. We're not going to make bad passes. We're not going to dribble in the box. We're going to be sound in the back. And he barked it yesterday. I wrote it down. I think it was like the 82nd, 83rd minute, and the cameras and the audio caught up, and he's just this exasperated Bruce in a sport coat. It's hot. He's like, too many turnovers, too easy. Quit giving them the ball. And I think he's just as flustered as we are, to be honest. There isn't a central pairing. I think Omar's the guy by attrition, and then like, hey, Matt Beasler, you want to be that guy? You try today. Hey, there's a lot of people in our crew who are really high on Matt Miazga.
Yeah.
I would love to see him excel. I'd be thrilled. And people were really raving about him in our studios after the last game. And again, everybody's got their own opinion. It's a subjective business that we live in. But I know Lexi and I kind of looked at each other and were like, I didn't see it. He had a great goal. I got it. But if you take that goal away, his job is defense. And I don't know what he did to
be better or worse than anything we have.
No, he's not. Now it's like Brooks is the answer, and now what do you do with Cameron? Is it just Cameron middle? Is he out wide? But I just want to go back real quick to one of your points about Bruce and how he's attacking this. Bruce is a really smart guy. He's been down this road before, and he also saw what happened to the U.S. in 2014. Yes, we got out of the group stage, but that early Josie Altidore injury, all that is, to me, is a constant reminder to everybody associated with U.S. soccer that you better have a plan B and, frankly, a plan C at every position regarding injuries, caution, suspensions, guys just not up to the task, illness, or whatever. So you're saying, does Bruce have, majority of his guys figured out? Yeah, he may, but he may not have the pecking order quite figured out. Look, you go back to the historic game where he moved Reyna out to a wide midfielder. That was versus Mexico, or fortunately, there was some huge World Cup game in the South Korea-Japan game where they moved
2002, yeah.
Yeah, 2002, they moved Reyna out wide. And look, few managers in the world know Reyna better than Bruce Arena through all he's dealt with in his career with him. And we all were like, oh, what is Claudio doing out wide? He's a central guy. He's not fast. Well, it seemed to work out pretty well. Bruce is using this time to lay out that pecking order and to figure out, if Josie goes down, how do I play? What do I do now? Is it Jordan Morris and Clint Dempsey? Is it Joe, whatever it is. So he's a smart guy, and this is all with an eye toward the future.
Look, Bruce is fallible just like everybody else, and he is worthy of criticism at times, even this summer in the Gold Cup. Yet while I talk about next summer, you can certainly be disappointed, and you can certainly have a go at Bruce for different things that he does. But as Rob said, the guy is very, very smart. And I think in Bruce's mind there is some unfinished business when it comes to the World Cup. And I think he's licking his chops for the opportunity to have one more go-around in a World Cup with what has to be, because of the time between, a better collection, or at least more good players, including what I think is going to be an incredible asset in Christian Pulisic that can fundamentally change the fates of the World Cup team when he is on the field.
But looking at this Gold Cup, go ahead, Rob.
Responsibility too. I'm sorry, Alexi. This is our carpool. Alexi and I yelling back and forth at each other.
That's cool.
Another thing, and you hit about his predecessor. We were talking about the other day. I don't ever remember Jurgen saying, "I was wrong. I was at fault. That's on me." He was always,
which is such a simple thing to do,
right.
But
right, whether you mean it or not, just say it. Right? But he always pushed the blame somewhere else, I felt like. And I think the media felt like it. I think the players felt that way, too. Bruce, numerous times, has said, hey, I didn't manage the team well today. Hey, we need to be better here. But he's not pointing fingers at other things. He's built goodwill. And I do think you talk about the burning desire for Bruce Arena to have greater achievement in the big stage. Yes. But there's this deep desire inside for him, and frankly, I think for Bob Bradley as well, to return this national team to the stature that those two managers left it at. I think they feel that something has happened with the image of this national team, the way it is perceived by players, by media, by fans, and I think they're really bothered by it. And in this brief time, I think Bruce wants to shine that shiny U.S. medal up again and show it off and say, guys, we are a program to be proud of. We are proud to use American-born players, guys who play in MLS. We're happy to go overseas as well, but I just feel like there was a point where we started to lose touch with what this team really was and how it was so great. Bruce really wants to bring that perception back.
There you go. Do you think that Bruce was the right call? Was he the right person to hire?
Yeah, I did at the time. I still do. I think I was interested to hear Rob say that, we'll figure it out after the World Cup. Some of these guys, the implication there being that maybe Bruce Arena sticks around, which I think I probably would have been surprised by when he was first hired. It felt like he was the coach for the 2018 World Cup, and then we'll see after.
Stick around. I don't care if he wins the World Cup. He's got to go after the World Cup. That's it.
I don't know. We have passed.
We have to have no one has to.
We have passed his precedent of him doing really, really well the second time around at a World Cup. So I don't see why you would possibly want him to not stick around for 2 World Cup cycles.
No, I don't want him. I want it. It's a short-term fix. That's it.
He's the right guy for that job. Short-term fix.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you, Rob. I just wanted to ask, so what did you mean when you said the way the team is perceived and the way, both by players and by media? How do you think it has changed, and what do you think he wants to correct?
Well, I think I think the identity of the national team program that Bruce and Bob built started to get lost. I think there was a higher value put on players who were playing overseas or from overseas. I got the sense, and again, maybe this is just me, maybe this is my personal take, that if you had distance from the American shores of soccer, that you were perceived to be a better player. That if all things were equal, the tiebreaker went to anybody who was associated with Europe. And there's a lot of people who will absolutely agree with that. And I'm thrilled that, guys like Brooks and Johnson have been called in. They've been a huge boost to this program. But I think it was, for a stretch, at the detriment of the growth of American soccer, particularly here on our shores. I think MLS was really kind of showed the back door, and there was an obvious
there was a friction
a fracture in the relationship between U.S. soccer and MLS. And if you look at any good national team out there, you see that there is a relationship between the domestic league and that national team. And if you don't have it and they're not on the same page together, then you got issues. I think that was a major concern of Sunil Gulati's. I know Don Garber and company had to have been quietly very happy that Bruce Arena was brought back in, because say what you want about MLS or American soccer, but they knew that Bruce was going to accept the structure that it was. I give Jurgen a lot of credit for looking outside of the box and trying to take things in a different direction, but I think he did it in a way that that burned a lot of people and really made them frustrated. And I think if a different approach was made, they might have been more open to coming to an easier solution to help club and country. But I think there was a huge fracture that had developed. I think there was a bad taste in a lot of players' mouths. I think there's a lot of guys out there who have bit their tongue, who have a lot to say about what happened in the past. And that's players, right? I mean, players aren't playing or they're not getting the results. They're always going to be grumpy about something. But I just got this sense, and I think a lot of people did, including people who worked in the federation, that things had kind of turned.
Well, they ran its course. And ultimately, when you looked at Jurgen Klinsmann, as I've said time and time again, I think he did. If he had left after the 2014 World Cup, I think he could have left and said, you know what, I'm leaving it in better shape than when I took it over. And it went, as we just talked about, another cycle. And I think that was really problematic. I think he oftentimes overpromised and underdelivered on what he was trying to do. I respect the fact that he wanted to take the team and do things that hadn't been done before. But in doing so, I think he too often made the players and the team try to be something that they are not, and threw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think that was difficult. And look, who knows? Maybe he looked at it as, I got to take a step back in order to go two steps forward, and maybe we weren't just weren't ready for that. Who knows? Time may tell. But I think that we can actually go forward and evolve and be something more, even while retaining who we are and what has brought us to this point and the success that it has entailed. Not that we're done, not that we don't have problems, and not that we can't get better.
And keep in mind, no manager in U.S. soccer history, for the women's side or the men's side, was ever given more resources than what Jurgen had to play with. I mean, it's
more resources, more power, more money, more leash, everything.
Yeah, I mean, Neil just handed the keys over to him, and then he realized, I've lost control. This is a self-driving vehicle, and I can't really take it where I want to go. So, end of discussion is we're happy that Bruce is here, and we believe that he's got everything going in the right direction.
I'm starting to get the impression that maybe you all have been getting some tweets or some emails from people doing the, do you miss Jurgen yet? And, why aren't you guys more critical of Bruce Arena? You were critical of Jurgen. I'm just getting that vibe.
Yeah, and that's why I said it's apples to oranges right now. And you can be critical and you can disagree with things that Bruce Arena has done, but I am once again looking at it as he was given a specific job, and many things that Jurgen either felt he was responsible for or really was responsible for are not under Bruce Arena's purview. So, and he welcomes that, and I think he's very honest with what he is charged with doing. And so that's how I think it's fair to assess him, and how I think it's different when you're talking about what Jurgen Klinsmann was as opposed to what Bruce Arena is. But ultimately, when they get to the World Cup, which is anything new because we've done it many, many times in a row, then you got to do well in the World Cup. And it doesn't matter whether it's Bruce Arena or Jurgen Klinsmann, given the talent and the experience that this team has.
Who's the next U.S. coach? I think there's 2 guys on the list right now.
Well, I think it can be somebody, given the cycle, that can do something very, very different than we've seen before.
Tab Ramos.
Yep, because he's internal.
Yep, and has the pedigree as a player and the international experience as a manager as well with the younger kids. Has great respect. Peter Vermes, to me, seems to be another guy. Similar characteristics with the background. Doesn't have that quote-unquote international manager or coaching experience, but does as a player.
And he's got an administrative type of part of his job, which is, people might look at that as unimportant, but I think it is important. I think it's made him better. But it also is, but for both of those guys, really kind of one setting. Peter Vermes has done great in Sporting KC, and Tab Ramos has yet to coach an actual club team. And so I think if you're looking for checks and minuses for these 2 guys, I think those are some of the things that we're both going to talk about. Then you've got a guy like Oscar Pereira, who's done so much great work down in Dallas, and I think there's a real desire for this youth type of movement and a recognition and play the kids type of thing going forward. And if we are going to change, it's got to start at a young age and that kind of stuff. But I think it'll be very interesting as to who they finally choose next summer. Who would you have?
There you go again.
I want Rob Stone. There you go. That's my answer.
Who doesn't? Who doesn't? You can't have him. You can't have him.
Oh, yeah. I'd lay out a mean cone. Take his cities and you guys just limber up down there and do some sprints. And when you guys are sweating, come back here in the middle. I'll figure something out. You know what my training session would be? It'd be an hour and a half of 5v2. That's all I would do. Just 5v2s, and I look at the fitness coach and go, "Do we need more?" And you go, "Yeah." All right, go to the fitness guy. Let's play 5v2 scrimmages. Let's play. Let's have fun.
Beautiful.
And set pieces. Oh, I would work so hard on set pieces. I'd have some of that random ass stuff that nobody had ever seen.
It's perfect.
Yeah, but also the same stuff that I yell out when we say somebody tried it yesterday, where it was like one of those like 3-pass free kick setups, and we're all moaning and yelling like, "What are you doing?" But if it works, we all would have been, off it. Jesse Marsh. There's another name maybe to consider. Jesse Marsh would be another name you might want to throw in that conversation. My guess is Sunil has that list right now, and it's a pretty short list. And I wouldn't even be surprised if there's been some early conversations about, hey, what are you doing next July or August?
Right.
So, Rob, if you were the coach, as you said, you'd focus on set piece practice, set piece defending. Would you put them in real time, like realistic CONCACAF settings, in the sense that would you have them bite each other?
Right, exactly. So, Josie, you've just been given a titty twister, and here's the free kick that we're going to set up from 3 yards out. Yeah. We joke with Alexi about set pieces, but it's so true. I mean, it's the special teams element of soccer where the game does stop, and you actually have a good amount of control over what is going to happen. But we go nuts. We go nuts with all the work that's set up and the screens and the picks and getting the big guys in, and then the guy striking the ball can't even get over the wall. Can't even get over the first defender. You go nuts. That is such simple stuff that separates winners from losers in my book.
So, with all that said, I am curious, maybe with Alexi, because I know you've had your experience playing in the U.S. jersey before and playing at center back before. Have you ever encountered anything like what we saw against El Salvador? Did you ever have to deal with the biting, the purple nurples, the titty twisters, the kind of gut punches at times?
I never had to deal with anybody biting, and it never occurred to me, even in my wildest just irritated states, it never occurred to me to bite anybody.
Spit?
Now, so my hierarchy is this in terms of the list of disgusting, vile things that you can do on a sporting field. Spitting is number 1, and I would say that biting is a close number 2. I can't think of anything more disgusting and insulting than spitting at somebody. It's a very overt and very internationally recognized type of action and symbol that says that says this is an insult, and I am trying to disgrace you in what I am doing, and I just think it's the most disgusting thing. And I would rather be punched in the face than spat upon on a soccer field. I would rather be punched in the face than bitten on a soccer field. But it was very strange to see, and obviously we have this history with Luis Suarez and stuff. And it's just, it never occurred to me to do that. But it gives us something to talk about. Now, the twisting of the nipple, a lot of that kind of stuff goes on, especially in set pieces, and the grabbing and the pinching and the pulling, all that, not as blatantly as we saw. And nowadays with so many cameras, and by the way, when VAR comes into play full time, a lot of this stuff is going to be seen much more, and it's probably going to go away. That's a good thing. But all that kind of stuff happens, and as I said, especially on set pieces where all sorts of stuff, and you really could call 10 different fouls if you wanted to. But this was blatant, and this was not just disgraceful to the player, but ultimately to the team. And I get it, they were frustrated and they knew it wasn't going their way, but that kind of stuff is just ridiculous.
I think it was disgraceful to the game as well, because those types of antics. And remember, there was also a lot of diving and flopping and rolling around from El Salvador. It's that type of stuff that the non-soccer fan out there holds on to, and that never leaves their memory bank. And they'll use that and they'll recall it and say, this is why I don't like this sport. This is a joke of a sport. You can do these type of activities and get away with it. Well, and that's what disappoints me the most. But it was funny. I was thinking about it this morning. I wanted to ask you about it. I feel like those incidents seem to happen more against American players than they do against players from other countries. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I'm right or wrong on that. I wonder if there's this kind of, there's this political feeling out there. I hate Mother America to the north, and you
don't think that doesn't manifest itself. Yeah. And we've dealt with this for years. And look, the reality is that for many of these countries, they were never going to compete in anything when it comes to economics or wealth of a country. Yet that one time where they not only could compete, but many times, especially in the past, they could better us, was on the soccer field. And then you take that away. And it's not just that you're representing a team that they are playing against, but you are representing the United States and everything that entails. And this isn't just, anti-American type of fervor or anything like that. It's just a deep-rooted seeding. And it happens just in all walks of life, where somebody that has more than you or is better than you, while you may respect them to a certain extent, you also want to beat them more, and it means you might do things that you wouldn't normally do against another competitor or another component that maybe you look at as being equal as opposed to above you or below you.
Remember, though, when Mexico was at their nastiest against the U.S., it was because the U.S. had taken the mantle away from them as the best team in CONCACAF. And they were disrespected, and they had to win it back. And that's when they are angry. And so right now, like you and I were at Azteca a couple months ago, it seemed rather subdued, rather calm. It's like, hey, we're the best. We're the best in this region. Hey, it's 1-1. We're not thrilled, but we're still the team.
Right.
And they still are, and I get it.
The gap that we talk about between us and Mexico just fluctuates constantly. Because there was a time a few years ago where we were saying, that gap is closed, and it's now the U.S., and it's just going to go back and forth. And that's a good thing for us in Mexico, although I'd love to see some other teams really try to hone in and be part of that conversation when it comes to the best in CONCACAF.
And that's why I'm excited for, Jamaica, Canada tonight. I think these are two nations that have that chance to be on the upswing, particularly Canada.
We need a good Canada. Yeah, I'd love to see a good Canada.
And I will say
they should be so much better, and they're not.
A World Cup is better with Jamaica in it.
Oh yeah,
for multiple reasons.
Pretty much everything's better with Jamaica or a Jamaican involvement.
Hallelujah.
All right, here's my proposal. I just want to do 1 day a week. I'm going to call you guys on Skype, and then I'm just going to hit record, and then I'm not going to talk, and let you all do all the talking, and then I'm going to put that out as a show, because this works way better for me. I don't have to ask questions. I don't have to keep track of anything. You guys can go, and then I'll just be like, all right, guys, thanks for talking. I like this plan.
I take it you've probably gotten coffee and got a sandwich while we were screaming and yelling about different stuff.
What was your line yesterday? Coffee and
yeah, exactly. Look, you wanted to do this, and this is what you get.
No, I'm being serious, but I do like the idea. It's like the old sitcom joke where I just put the phone down, I'm reading a magazine, I'm playing with the dogs. Yep. I come back they're still going. All right. No, I also wanted to note when you guys were talking about maybe Mexico getting a little bit feisty way back when. I think it's been a while since I brought this up, but folks who don't know, go back and watch I think the first 2 or 3 minutes of the movie BASEketball, and you will see Alexi Lalas, I believe, getting a shot to the groin, courtesy of a Mexico player.
That's right, yes. Yes, that happened, yep.
So you've got that film credit. That's good for you.
Yes. That would be
Parker, Matt Stone?
Yeah, that would be Ramon Ramirez many, many years ago. was a full frontal assault on my manhood, and it did not feel good. I would be lying if I told you that I didn't, let's say, embellish just to make sure that everybody saw exactly what had happened and where the said altercation had occurred. So yeah, it was, and you can look it up on YouTube. You can see it, all that kind of stuff. But it's well, yeah, we've since talked about it and laughed about it and stuff like that. But at the time, it's us in Mexico, and I love the rivalry between these two.
Get over somebody taking a shot at your mangoes. I don't think I could ever get over that.
I know
time heals a lot of wounds, but that's
what heals a lot of wounds? Alcohol, money. And so when you meet these guys in a setting where there is tequila involved, you tend to forget a lot of things, and you end up just singing and having a good time. And it's this mixed match of English and Spanish and Spanglish and all that kind of stuff, and we just let bygones be bygones, and we have some more drinks.
I will say it is pretty cool as an outsider to the competition on the field, to be with you in an establishment, which is often where you and I are, and we're around it, and we're in a soccer venue, a soccer setting, or there's something soccer's in town, and there'll be that random, there's Carlos Hermosillo, or there's Jorge Campos, there'll be this random American-Mexican encounter, and the production guys who didn't play always kind of step back a little bit like, oh, hold on, sparks are about to fly, we might have to get involved in here, and I'm not the guy to get involved. And it's always this and you're a pleasant guy, and you don't really have very many enemies that I know of. And it's all very peaceful and warm, and it's hugs, and it is clinking glasses and laughing and sharing stories, and then you go your way. But I do get this takeaway that everything is good, that it was all in the spirit of the moment, and that you guys, again, and that's part of growing up and maturing, but it's fascinating as an outsider to take those moments in.
Well, I really appreciate you all taking all this time. I don't know, are you at your destination yet, or are you still in LA traffic?
It's a long drive.
Well, listen, you should be incredibly pleased and honored, because we just drove this trip that we drive so many times, and we did it without Waze, which was in an effort, first off, to make sure that we had cellular reception so that we could do this, but also to give us enough time to make sure that we could just babble on as much as we possibly could. And we added a little time to our trip, but I think it was worthwhile, and it was a pleasure to do the show, as it always is.
I'm honored mostly because I have never referred to male genitalia as mangoes, but I'm never not going to do that now. So thank you, Rob Stone, for that. I really appreciate that.
Well, it's the summer terminology. In the winter you go with something else, but it's summer, it's mango season. Yeah, you embrace it.
I'm trying to think, cranberries is too small. I don't know what I would go with there. I don't know what the winter equivalent is.
Not cranberries. Cranberry, yeah, you need something larger.
Pumpkins, squash, something like that. Yeah. I'm glad we've gone down this road. This is where I totally thought this interview would end up, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. Good luck with the rest of the tournament, and hopefully we will talk to y'all soon.
Hey, thank you. Real quick, how much do we get paid for this again?
We'll discuss that later.
$1 million internet dollars. That's what you get paid.
Perfect. I love them.
Oh, I love internet dollars.
So valuable.
We're rich. All right, my man. Thanks.
Thanks, gentlemen.